22?
Sure, I got a great article. If some of you email me, I'll forward you the article about his life and what he did here. But in essence, he was a crackerjack. He graduated first in his class in piloting and second in machine gunning and gunnery, which was an odd combination for aviators. Seems like some of them were good at gunnery or some of them were good at flying, and he was good at both. And I don't call him this because I have a lot of respect for him, but his colleagues called him arrogant. And he'd be the guy who they'd be having lunch and all of a sudden they'd hear an aircraft and be like, "Where go outside?" And Frank Luke would be taking off and wave. He'd just take off on a mission on his own, and you can't do that, you know. So he was in the area for 18 days. He only flew 8 days. The other 10 days he was grounded for disciplinary purposes. Not because he was doing anything wrong, but he was just attacking and killing Germans without permission, essentially. But it's hard to punish someone for being a ruthless killer when you're in a war, you know? But at any rate, the first kill he ever got, he didn't credit for because it wasn't witnessed, because he was returning from a mission with his friends and he just peeled off with a formation. They didn't have radios. He gets back and says, "Oh, I shot down a German plane. I was having engine trouble. I had to find a place to land, but I kind of got in a firefight and I shot down a German plane, so I want one scratch on my bedpost for that one." And the guy says, "Hey, it's got to be witnessed. You don't get credit for shooting down a German plane if it's not witnessed." So he takes off a couple days later, again without permission, and as he's flying over the American positions in the front, he's dropping stones out of his cockpit, because there were open cockpits back then with little streamers coming off. And it said, "Watch for burning planes and balloons to the east, signed Lieutenant Luke." And he goes over and starts a firefight with a bunch of Germans, and he shoots down 2 observation balloons and a German plane. He comes and lands on the front line behind the American positions, walks up and is like, "Anybody see that? You saw that?" And they're like, "Oh my God, that was incredible." I mean, you got to imagine that'd be pretty neat to watch. So he takes up 5 or 6 affidavits signed by majors and captains, etc. Puts them in his pocket, lands at his area, and they're like, they got guys out there dressing him down for taking off without permission again. He says, "Well, I did shoot down 3 German aircraft." He says, "Luke, I told you don't get credit for any of those kills because none of them are confirmed." He says, "Well, it's funny you should mention that." And he reaches in and pulls out 6 affidavits or so testifying that they saw him do this. So he was the first ace. He achieved his goal of becoming the first ever ace, which means you shoot down 5 enemy aircraft before you're an ace. He ended up shooting 18 German aircraft down before he was finally killed. That's not why he earned the Medal of Honor. He earned the Medal of Honor because of the way that he died. The morning of his death, he took off and he was by himself again. And he was actually using a ridge line and flying below it, if you can imagine that, you know, to screen his movement as he was approaching some German balloons, because he loved to shoot down balloons. They called him the Arizona Balloon Buster. And these weren't like you hit them one time and they go down. You had to hit these things with like 150 rounds, and they were guarded by heavy anti-aircraft artillery, a lot of machine gun fire. So he swoops in, and he's actually hit by a German infantryman who was shooting down on him as his plane came by. So in the end, he wasn't even killed by the German Air Force. It was an infantryman that got him. As he was hit, he was mortally wounded and he was losing strength, and he decides he's going to have to do a controlled crash landing into German territory. And as he's crash landing, he spots a German squad of infantry moving across the field, and decides as he's crash landing, he's going to turn last minute and strafe them. So he strafes the German squad as he's crash landing, kills 6 of them, and the Medal of Honor citation says, "wounding as many more." So he took out 12 Germans with him as he's crash landing. He crashes. The Germans know that this is the heralded American ace, and we're using him for propaganda states, join the war, be like Frank Luke, etc. So they want him. They want him alive. And for hours they begged him to surrender, and every time they'd send a team out with a stretcher to get him out of his cockpit, he'd pull this Colt revolver out and shoot at him. And so finally, after hours and hours of begging him, "We'll give you help, we'll help you, just stop shooting," and they'd send Hans and Franz across the field, and he'd boom, 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 and they'd turn around and run, and finally they said, "Just machine gun him, he's never going to give up." So his fighting spirit and he never gave up, and that's the reason he earned the Medal of Honor. So, a good-looking guy. There's actually a photo of him with his aircraft before he was killed. So, like I said, I passed out my email address. If anybody wants to email me, I'll have an address to return. I'll scan that article and send it to you guys.
You said he was only flying here for 18 days?
He was in theater for 18 days. He was only allowed to fly for 8, and he shot down 18 aircraft in 8 days. He was grounded the other 10. He fought the St. Mihiel offensive was 2 weeks. Just preceding this offensive. It was the first time aviation and tanks were ever used in combat. He was there for 2 weeks, and then as you see, he died on the 29th, and the offensive here started the 26th. So he was in St. Mihiel for 2 weeks and here for 4 days. Luke Air Force Base in Arizona is named after him. And if I'm not mistaken, last year the Air Force academies, they have a honorary, like, I don't even know what it's called, an honorary, the class picks one aviation hero to be their honorary, whatever, class president, and they chose Frank Luke. Pretty amazing.